Mosaic Souls, and welcome to Conversations with Mosaic Souls. Today, my guest is Melissa Dinwiddie, and she is an artist, a multi-talented diva, and a wonderful entrepreneur. I think you're a serial entrepreneur too. So, just a Mosaic Soul to the core. Welcome, Melissa. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Thanks for having me. It's a delight.
Yes. Okay. So I like to start off all my interviews with the fundamental question: who are you? No, I'm just kidding. Well, what is your story? What's your journey to where you are today in your business, where you're being more fully expressed and doing the things that you love?
Well, how far back do you want to go? That's the question.
Well, yeah, it's up to you.
Well, my story okay, so if I go back to really, really early, when I was a really little kid, I knew I was an artist. I knew I was creative. I did all kinds of cool creative things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty early in, I got, that comparison trap gremlin started chattering in my ear and saying, oh, that person over there, he's the real artist or she's the real musician. Mm-hmm. And gradually, by the time I got to high school, I, by my own self-definition, was not creative. I was not an artist. I was not, I didn't think of myself in those ways at all. And then when I was, the summer before my senior year in high school, I started dancing. Mm-hmm. Really seriously, I fell in love with the art of dance, and I just became devoted to that. So dance in school became my real identity. Mm-hmm. And fast forward a few years, I took that love of dance and I auditioned for Juilliard in New York City, and I was headed for what I thought was going to be a fabulous career as a dancer and choreographer. Mm-hmm. And early on in that year, I developed a raging case of tendinitis in my ankles. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that really was the end of my dance career. Mm-hmm. So I ended up coming back to California and going back to school at UC Berkeley, where I had been for 1 year before going to New York, and I became an academic again. I was on the quest for the miracle cure for my dance injury for about 5 years, and during that time, I thought I was the least creative person on the planet. I didn't do any art, I didn't do any music, I didn't do really anything that felt creative to me, and I was just hardcore academia. And I thought, when I realized that a dance career was not in the offing, I decided, well, I'll just continue as an academic, and I was planning to go and get a PhD and teach college. And thankfully realized during I was getting a master's degree in England and realized this is so not for me. I don't know why, I don't know what is for me, but this is not it. Mm-hmm. And I came home, got married, and was completely really lost. I had no sense of who I was. Mm-hmm. And after the wedding, actually the wedding was an opportunity for me to really explore being creative. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was sort of an opportunity for me to have my creative way with things. And then after the wedding, I decided I was going to be a writer because I had written all kinds of essays in college and gotten good grades, so I thought, oh, I can do this. Mm-hmm. But with all the pressure of now this is what I'm going to do for my career and I'm going to have to get published and blah, 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 I got completely mired in perfectionist paralysis and choked. And I started making art to procrastinate. Mm. And there was no expectation on making art or doing crafty things because I was just doing it for fun. Yeah. So I thought, oh, well, I'll do this instead. Instead of writing, I'll quit writing, which I did, and I'll just make art. And somehow turn that into, somehow I'll turn it into a little hobby business or something. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with the art of lettering, of calligraphy. And I did gradually, over a couple of years, turn that into a little hobby business. Mm-hmm. And then I got divorced. And all of a sudden I had to make a living from that hobby business. Mm-hmm. in a very expensive part of the world. Yeah. I live in Silicon Valley, which is extremely expensive. And And I managed to do that. It took about 7 years to build up a business that was sustainable and profitable, but I did, and primarily by selling Jewish marriage contracts, which are documents that is a traditional part of every Jewish wedding ceremony, and involve fee and art. And it seemed at the time, this is before the internet, so it seemed at the time like the only way that I could think of to take my love of making things and lettering and calligraphy and turn that into an income source. And that went really well until 2008, when the economy tanked. And then my business tanked along with it. For the first time, my business went down. It took a nosedive. And I spent a couple of years really trying to get this very sick horse to get up and run by throwing a bunch of money at the problem. And succeeded only in getting myself deeply in debt, which I am one payment away from completely paying off.
Yay!
Yes, thank you.
Happy dance.
Happy dance. Yeah, it took about 5 years to pay off this debt.
Yeah.
So anyway, after a couple of years of throwing money at the problem and getting myself into debt, I was in a pretty desperate situation. And I also realized that I was very burned out on this business that I had built up, because it was all about creating. Yes, I had to be creative on my job, but it was creative at the services of other people, at their behest, and doing being very heavily art directed. Because at the time when I set up my business, that is how I figured out how to do it, was to make things according to people's very specific desires. And if they didn't like something, they wanted something moved over a millimeter, even if I thought it was going to look crappy, my job was to be a hired pen. I hired paintbrush, so that's what I did. So I got very, very burned out, and in 2010, when I realized, A, I'm extremely burned out on this business, and B, things are really not going well. I had a series of personal crises that hit one after another, and I decided, all right, this is it. Life is too short. I am going to I'm going to live the life I really, really want, instead of this life that is not really it. So I had to figure out what that life was, right? What is the life I really, really wanted? And at that point, I started my blog, Living a Creative Life, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to live a creative life, the life that felt to me authentic and fun and fulfilling and nourishing and exciting and adventurous. And so that's the journey that I've been on ever since. And the really cool thing is that after maybe 3 months after starting my blog, I realized that even though I wasn't yet making an income from this new direction that I was going in or anything like that, I was already living the life I wanted. Because the truth is that all it requires is stepping on the path. When you step on that path and walk toward whatever your dreams are, you are living your dreams right in that very moment. So from that moment on, I really have been living the big, bold, creative life that I really want, which is constantly evolving and shifting and changing. You know, one of my early taglines was, "Bliss evolves, keep following it." You know, everyone says, or Joseph Campbell said, "Follow your bliss."
Right.
And that's great advice, but if your bliss is headed off over there, but you are still going in this direction because you've dug yourself into a rut, then you've got a problem. And that's exactly what happened to me. So now I'm on a mission to empower other people to feed their own creative hungers and not let the things that got me stuck get in their way. So that's my story.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful story. I resonate with so many different things. I resonate with it all. Yeah, so I love that you said that too, about, you know, if your bliss is going one way, then and you're going this way. I love that, because it's just like one of the things that I define as a Mosaic Soul is a spiritual. You're not only creative, but you're spiritual. And that spiritual part of it comes in where you are aligned with your intuition, right? And so, say, for example, for instance, me, I've been singing majority of my life, But if my soul tomorrow says, okay, now you're going to be a painter, and I'm like, nope, I'm going to keep singing, you know, then I'm like, why the heck do I feel so miserable? And my soul is like, hey, I told you to do this, you know. So I love that. I love that you said
Exactly.
that. Yeah. So, how do you incorporate like all your multi-passions and your multi-talentedness into your business,
Um,
your life? It doesn't
yeah,
necessarily also have to be.
it took me into my mid 30s probably before I got it that I I can't do everything that I want to do all at the same time.
Mm.
I do get to do everything, just not all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I really tried for the longest time, and it's kind of funny that it took me that long to to figure it out.
Same lesson I'm learning too. So
Yeah. So I remember being the apartment I lived in before I moved into my home, and having this sort of epiphany moment. Oh my God. Bing! Oh, I get it now. Okay, I get to do everything, just not all at the same time. And for many years, I had wished that I could just pick one and be happy, but I couldn't. I just am not wired that way.
Right.
So it took me many years to accept that and embrace that fact about myself, because for so long I wish I could just pick one and then become, really phenomenally, amazingly good, like the best at that one thing, right?
Yeah.
And just like I'd have to kill myself if I picked one, because I'd get so bored.
Yeah, no, I totally relate to that. One of my favorite quotes is a quote by Maya Angelou, and she basically says, in a nutshell, that we limit ourselves because we limit God. And we can be a master of 10,000 things. We don't have to be jack of all trades.
Thank you.
Yes, and it's totally contrary to what every child has been beaten, over the head with. Choose one thing for the rest of your life. So it's like.
Well, if you think about it, look at like Broadway stars, right?
Right.
The ideal is to be a triple threat.
Right.
You sing, you dance, you act.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we have this, like that's so contrary to this notion that you can only do one if you want to get really good at it. That's BS, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you are a Mosaic Soul, or as I call it, a passion pluralite, when you have lots of interests and passions that you want to feed and be, consuming all the time, it poses its own unique challenges, right? How do you balance all that stuff? Mm-hmm. And back in that little kitchen in my old apartment, I remember thinking to myself, okay, I know I can't just pick one, but I'm going to stick with two. And then I thought, no, that's not going to work. I'll make it 3. No, that's not quite going to work. I'll make it 4. And I realized that about 4, which happens to be, there was in my kitchen, right, happens to be the number of burners on a typical stovetop. Yeah. That is about right for me. And so I developed what I now refer to as my stovetop method of life design. Mm-hmm. And the stovetop method goes like this. We talk about putting things on the back burner, right? Well, in my model, I have about 4 areas of adoration at any given time. Areas that I'm focusing on that are getting a lot of my energy at any given time. My real stove downstairs, it's a gas stove in my kitchen, and it's got 4 burners, and the right front burner is called the high-speed burner because it's hotter than all the other burners. And I do 90% of my cooking on that burner. Mm-hmm. But I can have, pasta boiling in a back burner and something else, simmering away on another burner and something else on another burner, and I stir those periodically. Meanwhile, I'm cooking madly on the right front burner. Yeah. So that's how I envision my life. I have my 4 sort of areas of adoration at any time, or my 4 focus areas, and I rotate those pots all the time. And I don't just limit myself to 4. I've got cupboards, I've got a refrigerator, I've got a freezer, I've got other ingredients waiting in drawers and cabinets that I can pull out a pot from the fridge and swap it out with one of the stovetop pots at any time, and I do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I find for me, this varies from person to person, but for me, about 3 to 9 months tends to be the amount of time when I like to really dig in deep to something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I rotate it.
Yeah.
Something else comes to the front.
I love that. I love that method. I love that. It totally resonates. I was just telling one of my good friends, I was like, for me, year-long projects are just hard.
Oh my God.
Just like a year, that's just like forever.
Yes.
Give me a project in 3-4 months, I'm in wholeheartedly. Like I can go in hard, but it's just like trying to do something for a year is just like, oh my God, I feel like ADD. But
totally.
It's I think that's the artist's way in a sense, because it's like it feeds that part of you being able to rotate, because it's like, okay, well, I'm done with this project. It was my passion quest for the last 6 months. Now I can move on to something else. It serves, especially I think this works out best being an entrepreneur. So because you can employ the different things in your business and your life as you want.
It's allowed me to let go of the guilt. Or false guilt, really, because there's true guilt is when you're actually culpable of something and maybe are harming somebody else. I wasn't harming anybody else by being a passion pluralite, but there was this sense of there's something wrong with me, this sense of guilt for doing something for a while and then letting it go for a while, shelving it for a while, the sense of, oh my gosh, I'm I don't know, a faker, or there's something wrong with me for doing that. And really creating this stovetop model has allowed me to just release all of that and just embrace the fact that, no, this is how I operate. And I'll be really into painting for a while, and then my music will come to the front for a while, and then my writing will come to the front for a while, and this is all good. This is all completely fine. It's how I'm wired. It's how I'm supposed to be.
Right. It's there's a book that I read this year, I think, that actually helped me a lot with that too. The Refuse to Choose.
I love that book.
Yeah, and I first found her like on YouTube, and one of the things she was just saying is just like, it is your duty to do everything that you want to do, and I was like, yes.
Yes, and she has this wonderful metaphor of a honeybee early on in that book that we talk about people like us. The culture talks about people like us as flaky or jack of all trade, master of none, or dilettantes or whatever. She talks about the honeybee. The honeybee goes to a flower, and then it goes to another flower, and it flits around from flower to flower, right? Nobody says to the honeybee, you're a flake because you didn't stick with this one flower forever. No. The honeybee goes to that flower and gets exactly what it needs. And as soon as it's gotten what it needs, it moves on to another flower. And we get to say the same thing too. We get to do whatever is calling to us until our needs for that thing are filled up. And then we get to switch over. Somebody else might be looking in from the outside and say, well, but you didn't achieve, I don't know, you didn't get to level 10 on, whatever that thing was.
All these standards.
Like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I got what I needed out of it at this point in my life. I can put it on a shelf, put it in the fridge, whip it back out again later if I want to.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like, the honeybee isn't not going to come back to that flower next to you when it like it's right. Yeah. So yeah. So what are the 4 pots on your stove right now?
Well, I would consider my business a big creative pot that's always one of the burners, for sure. And painting or art making, which involves painting, collage, any kind of visual art making is one. My music is another. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I play the ukulele. And I've gotten in the past year, I've gotten into improv. Theatrical improv, which is another big one. So, and that's kind of a cool one because it takes, unlike all of the other pots on my stove, that one takes very specific, discrete periods of time in my life. I go to a class, I go to a workshop, I go perform or go see a performance or something, whereas all the other ones could theoretically be sucking my time
Hmm.
24/7.
Yeah. Definitely understand.
So yeah, those are kind of the big ones right now.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, we have a lot in common. So, I wanted to know, find out a little bit more so for the people watching, Mosaic Souls watching. What was your process into actually making your business profitable? Because I know you said that, which is one of the mistakes I recently made, was just throwing money at the problem.
Mm.
But what was your process into getting out of that and making your business, living a creative life, actually profitable for you? Was there a turning point, or there was like this period of time where it's just like, okay, I get it now, it's coming into its own?
Well, I learned a lot from that expensive mistake of throwing money at the problem. One of the big things I learned, which I wish somebody had told me years and years ago, never pay for marketing with credit on credit. Never pay for marketing with money you don't have,
Mm-hmm.
because marketing is by definition a gamble.
Right.
And so yeah, so that I learned. Um, let's see. I'm a really big believer in investing in education. So investing in uh, programs or products that are going to make me more knowledgeable about what it is I'm trying to do and give me a leg up in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I've taken lots and lots of classes on business and marketing and things like that, which I never got any of that in high school or college.
Right.
I was so oblivious to.
Well, like the funny thing is, though, I actually did, and I still didn't get the kind of knowledge that I got, over the past like 2 years that I
Yeah.
did in college. So it's completely different. So.
Yeah, there's something about being out in the real world, as it were,
Mhm.
that that's quite an education.
Mhm.
The other thing that though is that it's very easy to get buy one more thing, thinking, oh well, this is going to be the thing that's going to teach me what I need to know, right? And at a certain point, it's very useful to just put a moratorium on spending.
Right.
Say, okay, I'm going to use what I know now, knowing that building a business from scratch it's a long game. It's not a
Right.
get rich quick kind of a thing. It's not a quick fix.
Mhm.
It's really a matter of growing an audience of people who are interested in what you have to offer,
Mhm.
who are fans, right? And that's a
Yeah.
slow process. Building true fans is because it's about building relationships.
Right.
Um, as a katuba artist, it was really different because my market for that business, which I still have that business, and because I'm now doing things that feed my own soul, that business I can actually enjoy again rather than feeling completely burned out on it.
Yeah.
But that business the market is very specific. It's people who are about to get married.
Mhm.
And it's not, you don't get repeat customers, right?
Right.
So I'm building
Maybe. No.
something, yeah, like I just got divorced, I'm coming back. Yeah, not so much.
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, so it's been a really different experience for me now in building up an audience of fans and followers who are interested in the kinds of products and services that I offer now, and also my art, the art that I'm making because I love to make art, the art that I'm making to feed my own soul.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing process. This is the thing I think that a lot of people who think they want to become entrepreneurs really don't always think about, is that there isn't a moment when, oh, that's it, I'm done, like I
Right.
got it, game over, right? There isn't a game over moment. It's little incremental things that happen over a long period. Are there people who have overnight success? There are people who have really skyrocketing success. There are those people,
Mhm.
and usually if you scratch them and look behind, there's many years that have gone in
Mhm.
to that, whatever business they've been growing
Right.
before they've gotten to that point.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, it's really a long game.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Definitely, like in our society, it's everyone's looking for a quick fix. We're all like, shoot me up. I'm ready to take it to the next level. It's just like this, even if it's seemingly, where things start to take off at a faster pace, like you said, there's this groundwork that goes into actually building the business and putting in all the structures and things
Yeah.
in place,
Yeah,
So,
you're never done.
yeah.
You're never done. And even when you think, oh, it's great, everything's going along great now. I mean, that happened to me with my Katuba business. I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to be able to coast. Things are so much better. Then the economy tanked. Like that was something I had no control over, right?
Yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, change is the only constant. So
Hmm.
yeah, really, I mean, it's so trite to say that, but it's so true.
Yeah, it's true. I definitely agree. One of the things I'm definitely working on is the money portion of it, of learning about the money portion, because I do believe that even as things fluctuate in your business, you can set it up to where you are okay.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? So yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's something like very simple things business-wise. I mean, I do not think of myself as a business and marketing guru, but there are some very sort of straightforward, simple things that I learned the hard way that seems so obvious and so stupid to me looking back. But things like it didn't occur to me that, oh, I really need to be putting money away every month in order to pay my taxes
mm,
in April. Like that didn't
mm,
even occur to me because I just had never had any kind of a financial business kind of a focus. And I so
mm,
know I'm not alone. So those are
mm,
the kinds of things that if you start knowing that, okay, hire an accountant and make sure that you're putting enough money away, we're paying quarterly prepayments or whatever it is, putting
mm,
enough money away from
mm.
whatever you're bringing in, so you don't have this notion of, oh, look at all this profit I'm making, and in
Right.
fact, really, 70% of it should be going to taxes or whatever.
God. Yeah. Yeah. So I've been, like I told you prior to this, our chatting today. I was checking out, your work and stuff, and I was curious, like, how was the launch of your what is it, the YBE, that
Oh, the
program?
academy.
Yes, the academy. How was that?
Oh, well, let's see. The last time I ran it was a year ago, and it went great. That was really fun. I've run that program. Oh my gosh, now I can't remember if it's 2 times or 3 times now.
Mm,
Um, but it's really well each time, and the it's so transformative. I mean, one of the things I love about what I do is that I know when I back in 2010 when I was figuring out what the life that I really really wanted looked like,
mm,
I realized that it was the foundation really rested on some pretty major pillars, two of which are creative expression, doing my creative things in
mhm.
all their various different variety,
All right.
and making a difference for other
Mm,
people.
mhm,
And because had periods in my life when I've been so massively stuck myself, and because I know how painful that is and how miserable that is, and how wonderful and fabulously great it feels to be doing my creative thing, and how that is what makes me happy, that's why I'm so passionate about empowering other people in that specific regard, right?
mhm,
And what I love so much about what I do with living a creative life, with my business and my blog, is that I am making an impact on people. And I know like um, politicians will say that if they get a handwritten letter for
mhm.
somebody from a person from a constituent, they know that that is representative of, I don't know, 6,000 people or 20,000 people or something like that.
Yeah.
And I get emails regularly, emails and Facebook messages and whatever from people thanking me and saying how much whether it's something they've purchased from me or whether it's some blog post they read or one of my art quotes that I put out every day or some of my music or whatever, that it has made a difference in their life, that it has gotten them back to creating or give them hope again or inspired them in some way. And that I just love that. And of all the programs that I offer, the Academy is the most transformative in the sort of overall scheme of things. So it's really gratifying to be able to pass on what I have learned in almost 48 years on the planet to pass it on to people so that hopefully they won't have to go through all the painful mistakes that I went through, right? And can benefit from some of the things that I've learned, and to see them thrive from that experience. And then going through as a community, I'm such a big believer in the power of community. And so often as creative people, a lot of us do a lot of our work in isolation, right? At home alone.
Right.
And it's very easy to feel very disconnected and alone, and it just makes such an enormous difference to know that there are people walking the path right next to you who have your back, who are cheering you on, who get it, who get it. And just being able to talk to somebody else who gets it is so huge. It makes us feel less crazy, and it's like that's why I run my programs. Almost all my programs are with a community component, because that's just so important.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. It is. It's so soul confirming. I think this is why I started the series. Actually, I was like, I want to know, not only help other people, but prove that I'm not crazy.
Absolutely.
Connect with other souls who are doing.
We have to.
Yeah.
Especially in this culture that has so much confusion around creativity and creative expression and passion pluralism, or being a Mosaic soul. There's so much confusion about that. We get so many mixed messages about it that we need to connect with other people like ourselves to remind ourselves that, no, this is good. We're right. We are on the right path. All these messages that we're getting from the culture, we can just disregard that.
Yeah. So, what are some things that you do to stay sane? I know that you have your your stovetop method, which I'm totally going to steal and utilize. But what are some, I don't know, practices or habits that you do to stay a little bit more grounded, being so multi-talented?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a lot of them. And it's cool because most of the practices that I do to stay sane are pretty new in my life, like in the past 4 or 5 years. So life has improved dramatically.
Yay! That's always good.
So one thing that's really relatively new in my life, maybe 2.5 years, I meditate. I have a daily meditation practice. Sometimes I miss it, and I just self-forgiveness and self-compassion and get right back to it the next day. And really, it's not a very big practice. It's maybe 10 to 15 minutes, occasionally 20 minutes. And usually it's first thing after I get up, usually when my husband is in the shower. One of my favorite mottos is, the thing I do first is the thing that gets done. So I now have been gradually, over the past few years, have been developing more and more of a morning series of practices that really keep me sane. And meditation is one of them. Writing in my journal is another one. Kind of similar to morning pages in the artist's way, but I don't stick to her specific guidelines so much as just use my journal as a way to do a brain dump. And also that's where I do most of my business thinking and come up with ideas for blog posts and new courses and things like that. So my journal is like my golden thing. And so those two things, before I leave the bedroom, I do those. And right now I'm at the tail end of a year-long project. I'm probably not likely to take another year-long project on again. It's called 3x5 by 365, and every day I write, fill up a 3x5 card to a one-word prompt. and I posted on my blog. And I started that project as a way to desensitize myself to the fear of sharing things, putting things out in the world that aren't perfect.
Yeah.
Nothing I ever create is ever going to be perfect. So this is a way of practicing putting things out there. It's very, I don't labor over these things. They're very quick. And so it's like, here's my mediocre offer today. It's an offer. It's what it is. So I do that as well. And then, so those are currently my morning practices. And then I've also really, this is so funny to me, but I've been very resistant my whole life to schedules, kind of allergic to schedules. And I think it very much goes with the territory of creators, and also Passion Pluralites or Mosaic Souls frequently are very resistant to schedules.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I have found that, much to my astonishment, that when I do maintain a schedule of getting onto my computer, say at 9 or 10 in the morning, and writing for 2 hours or whatever the current schedule is, because stovetop model, I'm always switching things around. When I do that, my day goes better.
Yeah.
And so, and I fall off the wagon all the time. But one of my sayings is the most important practice that we can engage in is the practice of getting back on the wagon.
Yeah.
The most important practice is just getting back on the wagon.
Yeah.
So yes, so coming back to a regular schedule in my morning, and then huge sanity creator booster for me is painting, making art. Huge. Like that just, it makes me so happy. It just fills me with joy.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's frustrating because not every day do I make something that I'm delighted by, right? But the process of letting myself be a 4-year-old and make a mess and play with color and get my hands dirty, that is one of the hugest sanity boosters in my world. And then the other thing is exercise. And I am terrible in terms of getting to the gym or doing any kind of cardio thing. Really, at the moment, I'm just terrible at that. But I have a treadmill desk. And so whenever I'm at my computer, not all the time, but I'm walking. So I walk usually at least a few hours a day. And that has made just so much difference in my sanity and my physical well-being. I didn't realize how sitting was killing me. Sitting was like destroying my back. Yeah. And I have scoliosis, so I have back issues kind of all the time a little bit. And I had no idea that my back being so out of whack all the time was so much because of sitting. So I walk a lot. And I also have a yoga practice, which currently is once a week, which is very minimal, but it's still, I get in there and I do an intensive yoga, vinyasa yoga practice, gets me sweaty and works my muscles. And so those are really the big ones. And then another thing that I know this is like way more than you probably wanted to hear, but a few years ago, I realized that I was way more of a workaholic than I wanted to be. And if I didn't want to be a workaholic, that wasn't something I could just wait until later to change. I needed to do something about it right now. So I instituted date night once a week with my husband, my now husband, then boyfriend. So that's a big one. And then another really huge one, getting enough sleep, which for me also means getting to bed at a reasonable hour rather than staying up super late, which is my default tendency. And that's something I have to keep getting back on the wagon of over and over and over again, but it makes a huge difference in my life. And all of these things together are also part of what has become really a self-compassion practice. That treating myself well, knowing that I am human, treating myself like a human, not like I'm supposed to be a robot or a superhuman.
Right.
Those things are just so key. And all of these things are practices. They're not, okay, I'm done now, or I've got it perfect now. It's ongoing, coming back to the practice, coming back to the practice, coming back to the practice.
I totally agree. About maybe like 2 years ago, I started developing that habit of getting up, I exercise, and then I come back and stretch, and then I meditate, clear Finding your formula is so crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah, and knowing what is going to help you to stay grounded and
Yes.
let that creative energy continue to flow.
That is
One,
the key. I have
yeah.
my golden formula is self-awareness plus self-compassion equals the key to everything good.
Mm,
Because we need to find that formula, right? And that requires a self-awareness. It means we have to notice what's
mm,
going well, what's not going well, what works for us, what doesn't work for us.
mm,
Bring mindfulness to our lives, right? And
yeah.
then the self-compassion is when you notice something and you're not happy about it, you feel bad about it, whatever, you don't go in and beat yourself up over it. That doesn't help anything. You
Mm,
treat yourself with love. You remind yourself you're human.
mm,
Everybody has the same kinds of problems. Everybody stumbles. Everybody does things that make them feel badly or unhappy or whatever.
mm,
It's not an excuse to beat yourself up. It's an opportunity to practice self-compassion and to be loving and kind and forgiving with yourself.
yeah.
And those two things together, just everything in my world comes back to self-awareness or mindfulness and self-compassion.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I always say is that you can't ever give from an empty cup. You can't be
Exactly.
there for other people. You can't create art. You can't be yourself if you're empty, if you're burnt out. It just doesn't work.
Exactly.
Another thing that I really resonated with what you said earlier was about just kind of like habits and getting back on the wagon, and it made me think of like how they always say it's like it takes 21 days to form a habit or whatever. But I love that because like with being a passion pluralite and a mosaic soul is like you can create these habits for the pot that you're most focused on right now. And
Yeah.
then as soon as you rotate it, you can switch out your habits. Yeah, it totally
Yeah.
goes. It's perfect. Totally feeds that. And also, another thing that I discovered, which has been kind of like a dormant gift, I think, a talent, is I used to draw a lot when I was little, and I was pretty good at it, and it's kind of been creeping back. So, like, even this week, my soul was like, just sit down and draw something.
Yes.
So I like drew this like I don't know random thing, and it was just like so fun. I was like, yay!
Yay, that's so great.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
It's all about
Yeah.
honoring that call.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Ugh. So such a journey in listening to the voice because I think because we've been so programmed into
Oh my
not
God.
not listening to it,
Yeah.
and so we rationalize why we shouldn't, oh, that's going to take away from me working on my business and I'm not going to make money or I won't have time for this and all these little voices that go on
Yeah.
that really aren't us.
Totally.
Yeah, so I love that. Listening to that voice is just like, you know. So yeah, but yeah. So yeah, just thank you so much for indulging and expressing and sharing your light.
Mm,
I really
thank you.
appreciate it. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. And Mosaic Souls, you can definitely check Melissa out. Her website will be below this video. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.